The sleek corner office of Pinnacle Consulting in downtown Seattle buzzed with the hum of the city below, the Space Needle visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows as I sat across from my manager, Susan Carter. At 43, I'd poured 7 years into this company, leaving behind a career in academia to dive headfirst into the corporate world. I'd traded late-night lesson plans for midnight strategy reports, salvaged client accounts no one else could touch, and boosted our Pacific Northwest portfolio by 150%, saving the company $3 million in operational inefficiencies. But now, Susan, mid-50s with a too-tight blazer and a smile that didn't reach her eyes, leaned back in her chair, her tone dripping with false sweetness. "Nora, you're exceptional," she said, her words laced with condescension. "But Emily, she's got that spark. People love being around her. She's just easier to work with." "Easier," I repeated, my voice steady as my nails dug into my palm beneath the desk. The sting ground. Easier, not smarter, not more effective, just easier. Emily, with her Instagram-worthy lunch selfies and motivational quotes plastered across her cubicle, was getting the promotion I'd earned. I'd spent years building systems, streamlining workflows, and delivering results that kept Pinnacle afloat. But Susan's words were a slap in the face. She shuffled papers on her desk, pretending to be busy, waiting for me to nod, to thank her, to play the gracious loser. Instead, I reached into my bag, pulled out a crisp white envelope, and slid it across her desk with a calm smile. "I appreciate the feedback, Susan," I said, my tone even. "But here's my resignation, effective 2 weeks from today." Susan's polished facade cracked, her eyes widening as she fumbled for words. "Nora, wait, let's talk this through," she stammered, her hands hovering over the envelope. "There's no need for this." I shook my head, standing to leave. "You've been clear," I said, "and I'm focused on results. That's why I'm leaving." She didn't know, none of them did, that while Emily was busy charming her way through happy hours, I'd been quietly building something of my own. For the past 3 years, I'd poured my frustrations into a leadership development firm, fully registered, growing steadily, and profitable since last quarter. I hadn't lost today. I'd outgrown the room. As I stepped out of Susan's office, the 12th floor of Pinnacle Consulting fell silent, heads turning, whispers trailing me like a shadow. Emily was probably already picturing her new office, but I moved with purpose, my heels clicking on the polished floor, knowing the second document in that envelope would turn their world upside down. The 12th floor of Pinnacle Consulting in Seattle was a theater of whispers. As I walked back to my desk, my resignation letter still burning a hole in Susan Carter's inbox. It had been an hour since I dropped the bombshell, walking away from a promotion I'd earned through 7 years of grit, late nights, last-minute pitches, and saving the company $3 million in inefficiencies. At 43, I'd given everything to Pinnacle, but Susan had chosen Emily, the 30-year-old social butterfly with a knack for selfies and girl boss quotes, over my proven results. The sting of her words, "Emily's just easier to work with," still lingered, but I wasn't here to sulk. I had a plan, one I'd kept hidden from everyone. Emily sauntered through the bullpen on day 4 of my 2-week notice, a latte in hand, her smug half-smile lighting up the room like she'd already claimed my desk. "Nora, I hope you're not too disappointed," she said, leaning over my cubicle wall, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "I know you really wanted that spot." I met her gaze briefly, my fingers moving methodically across my keyboard as I backed up 3 years of data, metrics, training manuals, workflow optimizations, not to take, but to document. Every dollar saved, every system I designed, every outcome tied to my team's success. No hard feelings, Emily, I said, my smile cool. You'll shine. She walked away, satisfied, oblivious to the foundation beneath those results, but one I'd built in secret. What no one at Pinnacle knew was that I'd been working on something bigger. 3 years ago, frustrated by the company's obsession with optics over outcomes, I'd started developing my own adaptive team performance software, outside work hours, using my own resources. Last week, the patent had been approved, a game changer that automated workflows, predicted project outcomes, and saved millions in operational costs. The second document in my resignation envelope laid it out. That software had driven millions in revenue and retention for Pinnacle, all tied to my intellectual property. I wasn't just leaving. I was taking the backbone of their success with me. A week later, I sat across from David Harper, CEO of Nexus Innovations, Pinnacle's biggest rival in the Pacific Northwest, in a sleek coffee shop overlooking Puget Sound. David slid a contract across the table, his voice steady and sincere. "We've been watching you, Nora," he said. "We're offering more than a role. Equity, autonomy, a fifth. Your platform's a revolution. We want you to lead it." I scanned the contract, my heart racing. This was what I'd built for. Recognition for substance, not charm. I signed, feeling a shift deep inside. A validation that didn't come from applause, but from respect. As I left the coffee shop, the Seattle skyline glittering in the distance, I knew Pinnacle was about to face the consequences of their choice. The Seattle skyline sparkled through the window of the quaint coffee shop overlooking Puget Sound, where I, Nora Bennett, sat across from David Harper, the CEO of Nexus Innovations. It had been 10 days since I'd resigned from Pinnacle Consulting, walking away from a promotion I'd earned through 7 years of relentless work, systems I'd built, accounts I'd saved, and $3 million in efficiencies I'd delivered. At 43, I'd given everything to Pinnacle, but my manager, Susan Carter, had chosen Emily, a 30-year-old who thrived on charm, over my proven results. "Emily's easier to work with," Susan had said, a phrase that stung like a slap. But now, as I signed the partnership agreement with Nexus, Pinnacle's biggest rival, I felt the weight of that moment lift. David's offer wasn't just a job. It was equity, autonomy, and a chance to lead with the adaptive team performance software I'd patented in secret, a tool that had quietly driven millions in value for Pinnacle. Back at Pinnacle, the fallout from my resignation was unfolding. Susan had called me into her glass-walled office on my last day, her polished facade shattered, her voice trembling as she held up the second document I'd included with my resignation. "Nora, we need to discuss this report," she said, her fingers stiff around the pages. It detailed the impact of my software, operational savings, automated workflows, predictive forecasting, all tied to my intellectual property, now out of Pinnacle's reach. "Why didn't you tell us about this platform?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. I straightened my blazer, my tone calm. "I did. 3 proposals over 2 years," I said. "You dismissed them, said your priority was interpersonal chemistry across departments." Her face drained of color as she absorbed the data, realizing the millions in revenue and retention I'd driven. "This is patented?" she asked, her voice cracking. I nodded. "Filed last year, fully approved. And I've accepted an equity partnership at Nexus Innovations. They're scaling it firm-wide." Susan's eyes widened, panic setting in. "Nexus? Nora, no, you can't," she stammered. "That's our biggest competitor in the Northwest." "What about loyalty?" I tilted my head, my voice steady. "Loyalty? You mean when you chose Emily's charm over my results?" Or when you ignored my proposals because I didn't host enough happy hours. She opened her mouth, but I didn't wait. If you'd valued outcomes over politics, we wouldn't be here. She tried to counter, offering a senior VP role to keep me, but I shook my head. It was never about the title, I said. It was about being valued. I turned and walked out, leaving her with the sound of her frantic dialing echoing behind me. As I handed in my access badge, I felt the weight of 7 years lift. Nexus was my future, a place where results mattered, where my software would redefine how teams worked. But Pinnacle's unraveling had only just begun, and the consequences of their choice were about to hit harder than anyone could imagine. The sleek offices of Pinnacle Consulting in Seattle were a ghost of their former glory. The once buzzing 12th floor, now a maze of empty cubicles and whispered regrets. It had been 3 months since I, Nora Bennett, resigned at 43, walking away from a promotion I'd earned through 7 years of grit. Systems I'd built, clients I'd saved, and $3 million in efficiencies I'd delivered. My manager, Susan Carter, had chosen Emily, a 30-year-old who thrived on charm, over my proven results, dismissing me as too focused on outcomes. But my resignation had been a catalyst, exposing the fragility of Pinnacle's foundation, the adaptive team performance software I'd developed in secret, patented, and now powering Nexus Innovations, Pinnacle's biggest rival, had been the backbone of their success, and without it, they were crumbling. The news broke like a tidal wave. Headlines screamed, Pinnacle Consulting loses 35% of clients after Q3 systems collapse. Articles detailed missed deadlines, ballooning budgets, and 4 flagship clients jumping ship. It's like the backbone of their operations vanished, one former client told the Seattle Business Journal. I smiled. My software had streamlined their workflows, predicted project outcomes, and saved millions. But they'd taken it for granted, assuming Emily's charm could fill the void. Susan resigned a month ago, her polished facade shattered by the board's scrutiny, while Emily stepped down shortly after, her girl boss persona no match for the demands of real leadership. The company was in free fall, a stark contrast to the empire I'd helped build. At Nexus Innovations, I'd found my place. My first day as a partner felt like stepping into a new world. No beige walls, no passive-aggressive emails, just a sleek office overlooking Elliott Bay and a nameplate reading Nora Bennett, Partner, Strategy and Systems Innovation. David Harper, the CEO, introduced me at an all-hands meeting, telling my story, not of charm, but of substance. Nora's platform has saved millions, he said, his voice steady. She's here to lead a new frontier. My software cut project timelines by 50%, boosted client satisfaction to record highs, and drew 3 Fortune 100 companies to license it. The respect I'd craved at Pinnacle was here, earned through results, not optics. Then came the email that sealed it. An apology from Susan, sent from her personal account. I was wrong, she wrote, her words raw. Dismissing your work was the worst mistake of my career. The board knows what you built and what we lost. I read it twice, a flicker of validation warming my chest, but I didn't need her regret. I'd already moved on, building something bigger than Pinnacle could ever dream of. What legacy would my journey leave? And how would it inspire others who'd been overlooked? The sun set over Elliott Bay, casting a golden glow through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my new office at Nexus Innovations in Seattle. It had been 6 months since I, Nora Bennett, walked away from Pinnacle Consulting at 43, leaving behind a promotion I'd earned through 7 years of relentless work, systems I'd built, clients I'd saved, and $3 million in efficiencies I'd delivered. My former manager, Susan Carter, had chosen Emily's charm over my results. But that choice had unraveled Pinnacle, with headlines reporting a 35% client loss and a systems collapse after I took my patented software to Nexus, their biggest rival. Now, as I stood at the helm of Nexus's strategy division, my journey had become a beacon for those who'd been underestimated. That morning, David Harper, Nexus's CEO, stood by my desk, holding a copy of the Seattle Business Chronicle. "Have you seen this?" he asked, unfolding the paper. The headline read, "Pinnacle Consulting announces emergency restructure amid mass exodus." The article detailed their downfall, downsizing, client defections, and a failed attempt to rebuild my platform in-house. "They didn't understand the foundation," David said, a knowing smile on his face. "That's why the board voted unanimously to promote you, Executive Vice President of Strategic Innovation, starting next week." I nodded, a quiet warmth spreading through me. My software had revolutionized Nexus, cutting timelines by 50%, boosting client satisfaction, and securing licensing deals with 3 Fortune 100 companies. This was what recognition felt like. Respect for substance, not optics. Later that day, I called a team meeting, the room filling with engineers, analysts, and designers. Not one here for show, but because they cared. "Before we dive into our next rollout," I said, my voice steady, "I want to share a story, not about tech, but about value, about recognizing it in others, and never letting anyone define your worth." Heads nodded, eyes focused, as I told them of my journey, from being overlooked at Pinnacle to building a legacy at Nexus. The platform I'd developed in secret, now a cornerstone of Nexus's success, had shifted the industry, proving that quiet strength, aligned with purpose, could build movements. That evening, as I drove past Pinnacle's faded logo, a for lease sign blinking in their 4th-floor window, I felt no smugness, only gratitude. They hadn't seen me, hadn't valued me, and in doing so, they'd set me free to build something better. Who else was out there, quietly building, waiting for their moment to rise? Share your story in the comments, and subscribe for more tales of triumph that prove rejection isn't a dead end, it's a redirection. Next week, we're uncovering another story of resilience that'll inspire you. Don't miss it.